So here at Microcenter, we do a lot of 3D printing, and I mean a lot, clearly, because you could see a lot of the projects we've worked on this desk here. Now, if you stop at your local Microcenter, you're going to see a wide selection of 3D printers as well as tons of filament. And we keep tons of filament in stock because we know you really go through it when you're doing a lot of 3D prints. And 3D printing is something that is kind of new to me over the last 2 years that I've been working here at Microcenter. I've learned a lot, and I've used that, knowledge I've kind of grown to make this. This is a video that we just did a few days ago. It's a Doom-themed PC. So we built the PC, but then we 3D printed all of these props that go around it to really dress it up and make it look metal and gory and Doom-like. And I'm really, really happy with the outcome. So I figured, let me make a follow-up video and sort of talk holistically about 3D printing and some of the different things that you can do with 3D printing, especially coming from someone like me who is still, I think, on the novice side. Jacob and Andy, who also work here in the studio at Microcenter, who do a lot of the content for 3D printing, those guys are the pros. But someone coming in fresh and just getting themselves like a Bamboo Labs A1, this is the kind of stuff that you can do because this is what I've been kind of doing the last 2 years. So first and foremost, let's talk about the Doom PC build because this took a lot out of me. I've been working on this for about a week straight. We planned to do a video for the launch of Doom and tie it into a PC build, and I really wanted to go all out. And I pulled out all the stops and I 3D printed all of these like props and parts and other things. And so I found all of these STLs online. So that's through MakerWorld, Thingiverse, Printables, all of the different websites that have STLs available. I'm not really a 3D designer. I've been tinkering with Tinkercad, but I'm not a 3D designer, so I don't know how to make anything like this specifically. So starting with those websites, that's a really good first step to sort of get into 3D printing. So I would just go and I would search different files, and fortunately I found a bunch of files that are actually from the game itself. So a lot of these like little towers, this arch, this skull, even the figurine himself, which I'll talk about more in a minute, those are all game files or 3D files from the game Doom. So that was actually pretty easy to do. Other ones are things that people have created that they opened up for people to print. It's just a wide variety of like bone piles for Warhammer. And they're all really easy to print. I just use regular PLA. Some of them took a few hours to print. This figurine took 24 hours to print. I did that on a Bamboo Labs A1 Mini, actually, with a 0.2 nozzle. 24 hours to print this, and it was covered completely in supports. I think there's better and smarter ways to do it. I think resin printing is probably the way to go, and that's not something that I've really messed with much. So I think that's the next step for me, is to look into resin printing, because I think that's gonna be better for a lot of the figurine kind of stuff, because now that I've done it, I really wanna do it more. But with that being said, it's still possible to do with a regular 3D printer like an A1 or a Creality, one of those bed slinger type of printers. And the cool thing is, after 24 hours, I got my print. I spent about an hour prying off all of the supports very delicately because I did not want to damage this. And I have this held in place with double-sided tape. But the other thing that you may notice about some of the 3D printed props here, oh wow, we really attached this well. I'm glad he was really supported well. One thing you might notice is that these are all painted. So a lot of these are printed in just regular PLA, and I use beige or gray as kind of like a base color for a lot of these. Like the skulls were all like a beige color. Even this, I think, was like a white because I wanted the teeth and other things to remain white. This was like a beige neutral kind of PLA because I knew I was going to cover it in paint. But one thing that we did that Jacob showed me was we used a filler primer to fill a lot of these because you get those layer lines here. And that actually did a pretty good job at filling in the layer lines so it didn't look exactly like a 3D print. We didn't sand anything because I didn't want to spend too much time on these. I kind of only had a couple of days to get it ready and there was a lot to print. So we didn't sand any of this. I think if we sanded it and did the filler primer, it would have come out a lot better. But for my first try for something like this, I'm pretty satisfied with the result. There's nowhere to go but up, right? So with this guy, we just did a base coat with the filler primer, and then we had another white paint primer that we did that I just coated right on there, and then I just started painting with regular acrylic paint. Maybe not the most ideal paint for miniature figures. I've never done Warhammer stuff before, so I don't really know much about, oil-based paints or the specialty paints that they use for figurines. I definitely learned how to use the brush. I used to be a photo retoucher for a long time, so a lot of those photo retouching skills sort of translated over to physical brushes because I found this easier than I thought it would be. You need to be very delicate, very, very little amount of paint on the brush. You don't really need that much. And I found it really easy. So I'm into this. I want to do more of these. But the take home is that it took a long time to put all this together because we had to prime everything. We had to paint everything. You may notice that there's shading on everything, and that was actually really easy. We just did a mix of black acrylic paint with water, doused it all over, all of the different things, and then you take a sponge or a paper towel, blot it, and the acrylic paint will stay in the cracks and crevices, but then it'll wipe off everything else. So you get kind of highlights and your shaded areas, and it looks really grimy, which works for this because it's supposed to be a hellscape, so everything is grimy. So that works. If I was printing something that was supposed to look realistic and clean, probably wouldn't work as well with this technique, but I knew that that was a technique that would work really well for this, and I think it came out great. I used a wet paintbrush with water and some red paint to do some blood splatter. I literally just flicked it on. I also took a glue gun and one of our air compressors, and I just shot some hot glue all over the skull to sort of look like some webbing. I didn't want to overdo the webbing because I was kind of worried it would get sucked up by the fans and pulled into the PC, so I kind of just did a little bit here. The chains, whoops. The chains, these are all 3D printed. We just painted these for highlights and like rust detail. These are a print in place chain that I found. So I printed these and literally just clipped right on the side and just looped the chain together to make a longer chain that goes around the AIO tubes. That was pretty easy to do. We have files that we found for fan covers that match the theme of this. There's all kinds of things. And that's just this one PC build. I mean, we printed a lot. Like, we went all in on this one, and I'm really happy with the outcome. But also here at the studio at Microcenter, we've been using 3D printing for the last 2 years to do all kinds of things. So I kind of want to talk about some of the different projects we've worked on. On the Doom kind of setup here, there was this light box that I found in STL for, and originally I was going to have an LED RGB strip in here to glow, so this would glow, and I was going to put this in the case. This was too big, and then I was thinking I'll print a smaller version, and then I kind of gave up on it because I felt like there's too many logos. We have a logo plate here, we have the logo on the bust over here. It just felt like too many logos, so at this point I just kind of scrapped this one. But this was a really easy one to do because you can get a light box with an LED strip, and you can actually plug it straight into your motherboard if you want to have something like this incorporated into your PC build. And we sell all those parts at Microcenter. They're actually really easy to find, and we had the perfect short run LED strip that fit in there. So that was actually kind of neat. But we also use 3D printers for a wide variety of different things. I mean, so this is a motherboard stand that Jacob designed, and he designed it so that we can just screw in any size motherboard and we can have it stand just like that. So if you want to get photos or videos, able to do it easily, because motherboards are the kind of thing you want to film standing up, but they're so top heavy because all of the coolers on the VRMs at the top. I've dropped a couple of motherboards over the last 2 years trying to get a good shot of it, so this was our solution to make sure that never happens again. And because they're so top heavy, he was able to design this because he knows how to design 3D files with a screw top, and we have a 1 kilogram counterweight that we put in there. So that's actually really handy because, like I said, motherboards get really, really heavy. So this is a good counterweight that we can use to just keep it upright. It's still at a little bit of a tilted back angle, ever so slightly, but it gives you really good shots. If you've ever wondered how we get shots of those motherboards, this is what we use. Now, there's all kinds of other things that are just STLs that I have found online, which you can use for all kinds of things. For instance, this is a stand for different memory sticks. This is just a bunch of RAM that we have laying around here, and I have this organizer so I can put memory, and I can even stack this up. I have a couple of these printed because we have a lot of memory sitting around. And I can't remember why we have so much memory, but that we do. I like logo plates. I think this is a really fun and cool thing that you can make relatively easy. Now, Jacob showed me how to take a PNG or an SVG or kind of like another sort of vector file that you can use and convert that into a 3D print like this. And then you can add sort of some height to it if you want. So we have this NVIDIA one, we have this microcenter one, obviously. And logo plates are another cool and simple, easy one. You know, we did a nameplate over here, printed that for Dune Dark Ages. And this is a really nice prop. I like using these a lot because especially you can light this because it's a 3D object. It's not just a flat 2D sign. You can light this in different ways and the shadows will interact with that. So it'll actually look really cool. We've printed all kinds of things over the years that you've probably seen. We had this question mark we used in thumbnails a couple of times, but it broke. This was just made out of regular PLA and we dropped it and it snapped, but I could probably just glue it back together. It still works. This was a project that I was working on. I wanted to make a miniature Nintendo arcade with a retro TV that goes on a old monitor that I had. It was a little field monitor I had for my camera. So I would just glue this to the field monitor. This was a failed print, so that's why I have this sitting around. But I actually 3D designed this plate in Tinkercad, and it's supposed to look like a retro TV. It has the knobs and the buttons. This was actually really easy to design. It took me a couple of tries to get it just right, but when I finally printed the finalized one, because I think I just merged this and had it fully over like that, I have the final one at home. Once I got it just right and it printed, it was kind of amazing to see something that I had planned and drew out and sort of designed come to life. And that's something really unique about 3D printing, is that you can bring all of these digital elements to life. I mean, I have a Doomslayer over here. That's pretty cool. And all kinds of other things that you can find. I mean, I love all varieties of games, you know, really love Lethal Company. I was a big fan of Lethal Company when it first came out. I still play, but just not as regularly. So I printed the helmet, and this was my first time printing something like this. It was just an STL I found with the different parts. I just sized it down because the printer I was using, I think it was an A1 Mini, and I didn't feel confident in doing a full-size helmet just yet. And I even used one of those Creality pens where you can melt the different filaments and you can use it to weld it together. The weld job is a little rough. You know, it was my first time doing it, but I'm still satisfied with the outcome. You know, I feel like I've learned a lot. This was just a screw from Lethal Company that I found. You know, you can put all kinds of stuff in there for some reason. And obviously you've seen our GPU stands. We use those a lot when we're getting B-roll shots of GPUs. That was just another STL that I found. Funny enough, when I went to CES, I went to Intel's booth, and Intel had all of their B580 and B570 cards on display. They used the same STL. They actually 3D printed their GPU stands, and it was the same exact STL with this little nameplate. So to the creator of that original STL, that file has gone places. This is a big 3D that we used for a video where we talk about 3D printing, and this print actually failed. But I thought it looked so cool because you can see, you know, the filler gives it texture, right? Like all of this infill gives it texture, and I thought it looked cooler than just a finished, like flush texture. So I just left it like that and kept it, and this has been pretty fun. Now, on top of that, I mean, it's just all varieties of props. Like a lot of these are props. Some of these are practical use, like storing PC parts, because obviously we cover a lot of computer parts here at Microcenter. Some of them are just random props. This is an ear of corn that we test printed because we wanted to talk about how PLA was derived from corn. So we actually went to a cornfield and we had a real ear of corn, and then we had a fake 3D printed ear of corn to be like, this came from this. And I just have a random ear of corn sitting around. Now, at this point, this is kind of a graveyard of projects for me because these are all projects I have not finished yet. For instance, I went through this big tile phase. I found all of these 3D printed tile files that I was really into, and I'm still gonna finish this project at some point. So I printed a rainbow of these little hexagon texture tiles because I wanted to recreate the original Microcenter logo from our original Lane Avenue store. And that had a big Microcenter on the wall, and it had this sort of rainbow swipe going around it, this like rainbow thing. I'll put the image up here. But I wanted to recreate that with these 3D printed tiles and put that here in the studio. To do that to a decent sized scale would actually necessitate a lot of tiles. And I sort of overestimated how many tiles would really be needed for this because I printed many of these. I think I was able to fit about 25 per plate, and each plate took, I don't remember, 6 to 8 hours, but then it was just getting to be a really long project that I sort of shelved, but I'll pick it back up. And then here's my bin of just various wall texture and different sort of things that I found that I wanted to decorate the wall when we were setting up the studio here. Some of these are failed prints, some of these I just don't like because they didn't print very well, or maybe the PLA was just too wet. I found these like puzzle piece tiles that I thought looked really cool, so I started printing these so I could like put them together, and I just haven't found a spot to put them. Or I think I remember why I dropped this, is because fitting them together was kind of awkward. You had to do it in the right spot, and then you could do like a whole arrangement of different colored sort of tiles. Threadboards, we talked to the designer of this threadboard project. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he sent us the STLs for this. We printed a bunch of these, tested them out, and I just haven't put them up just yet, so I've been sitting on that for a while. I mean, I have computer stands, like little laptop stands, and then of course, I have my 3D printed computer case, which actually has a full computer in there. It's an ITX build, and we did this on the Microcenter podcast with Mr. Yeaster, who is really awesome. He's a really, really cool influencer if you want to check out his videos. But we built this on the Microcenter podcast, and this is a fully 3D printed computer case. This is made from PETG, which is a more durable, material. Actually, this is supposed to go on display in the store. This really is a graveyard of projects for me. I've got to go drop this off at the Bethel store soon because it has to go on display there. It's just been sitting here in the studio for the last 2 weeks. But this is kind of an overview of just all of the different things that we've done with 3D printing here at Microcenter. Props, utilitarian things, just all manner of just different use cases are there when it comes to 3D printing. But most importantly, what would you do with a 3D printer? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, stop by your local Microcenter, check out our wide selection of 3D printers and inland filaments. And remember, if you don't have a Microcenter near you, then be sure to comment hashtag I want a Microcenter near me.